Hi guys, welcome. I am so glad you could join me tonight. I want you to just settle in, find a comfortable position, and let the weight of the day start to press into the mattress beneath you. Take a deep breath. We aren't going anywhere fast tonight. We are just going to drift back in time to a place that doesn't exist anymore, but once felt as solid and permanent as the ground under our feet tonight. We are looking back at the Soviet Union. It was a vast, sprawling country, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, that stretched across 11 time zones, from the Baltic Sea all the way to the Pacific Ocean. It existed for most of the 20th century, from 1922 until 1991, and for the millions of people who lived there, it wasn't just a collection of headlines or political theories. It was simply home. Often, when we talk about this time, we get caught up in the big, loud words, revolutions, Cold Wars, and space races. But history isn't always loud. Most of history is actually very quiet. It is the sound of a kettle whistling in a small kitchen. It is the texture of a heavy wool coat. It is the way the light looks hitting the pavement on a Tuesday afternoon. We are going to explore that quiet side of things, the everyday rhythm of life, behind what they used to call the Iron Curtain. It wasn't a world of shadows, but a world of soft greys, warm tea, and the steady, patient pulse of a people who knew how to wait, how to share, and how to find peace in the small things. Imagine it is a Tuesday morning in a suburb of a city like Moscow, or perhaps Kyiv or Minsk. The year is somewhere in the mid-1970s. The air in the room is still and cool. You are lying in a bed that has been in your family for years, tucked under a heavy quilted blanket that smells faintly of lavender and old cotton. Outside, the world is beginning to stir, but it does so without the frantic rush we are used to today. There is no buzzing smartphone, no digital chime. There is only the slow, blue light of dawn filtering through the thin curtains of your Khrushchevka apartment. These apartment buildings were everywhere. They were 5-story blocks made of concrete, built quickly to house everyone, and they all looked very much the same. To some, they looked plain, but to you, this building is a familiar friend. You know every creak in the floorboards. You know the exact sound the radiator makes when the steam starts to huff through the pipes in the winter, a rhythmic, metallic tink-tink that tells you the heat is coming. You sit up slowly. Your feet find the cold linoleum floor. You reach for your robe, a thick, quilted thing, and you head toward the kitchen. In many of these apartments, especially the older ones, the kitchen was communal. You might share this space with 2 or 3 other families. It sounds crowded, doesn't it? But there was a certain rhythm to it. You would see your neighbor, old Maria Ivanovna, already there in her dressing gown, standing by the stove. She would nod to you, a soft, sleepy greeting, and you would nod back. No one talked much in the mornings. The silence was respected. The kitchen smelled of many things at once. Toasted rye bread, the sharp scent of kerosene or gas from the stove, and always, the smell of black tea. In the Soviet Union, tea was the constant companion. It wasn't fancy. It was strong, dark tea kept warm in a pot, often served with a small cube of sugar held between the teeth as you sipped. You watched the steam rise from your glass podstakanik, which is a glass held in a decorative metal frame with a handle. The metal is cool against your palm, while the glass is hot. You sit at the small wooden table, watching the light change on the wall. Outside the window, the city is waking up. You hear the distant, melodic hum of a trolley bus, It is a distinct sound, the electric hiss of the poles sliding along the overhead wires, followed by the low, vibrating growl of the motor. It is a reliable sound. You know that if you leave in 20 minutes, that trolleybus will be there to take you to the metro station, or the factory, or the office. You dress for the day. Your clothes are sturdy. They aren't meant to be trendy. They are meant to last. A heavy wool skirt or trousers, a cotton shirt that has been starched and ironed with care, and a coat that feels like a shield against the world. Before you leave, you grab your revolver. This is a small, string mesh bag that folds up into nothing and fits in your pocket. Everyone carries an avoska. The word comes from the Russian word avos, which means perhaps or just in case. You carry it because you never know when a shop might suddenly have a shipment of oranges, or fresh bread, or maybe some sturdy shoes. If you see a line forming, you join it and you pull out your string bag. It is a symbol of a life lived with patience. Stepping out of the apartment building, the air is crisp. The hallways smell of floor wax and the faint, lingering scent of cabbage soup from the night before. You walk down the stairs. The elevator is small and sometimes temperamental, so the stairs are better for the soul. You emerge into the courtyard. These courtyards were the heart of Soviet life. There is a playground with a metal slide that is freezing to the touch, and a few wooden benches where the pensioners will sit later in the day to watch the world go by and comment on the weather. The streets are wide and grey, but not a depressing grey. It is a soft, architectural grey. There aren't many private cars, just the occasional Jiguli or a sturdy Volgaso. The air is surprisingly clear. Most people are walking. You see a sea of dark coats and fur hats, everyone moving with a quiet, steady purpose. There is a sense of collective movement. You aren't just an individual going to work. You are part of a giant, humming machine of millions of people all starting their day together. You reach the metro station. The Soviet metro was something of a wonder. You descend deep underground on an escalator that seems to go on forever, down into the belly of the earth. But instead of a dark, grimy tunnel, you find a palace. The walls are marble. There are chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, casting a warm, golden glow over the commuters. There are bronze statues of workers and soldiers, their surfaces polished, bright by thousands of hands touching them for good luck as they pass. The train arrives with a rush of wind and a deep, rhythmic clatter. You find a seat on the leather bench. People around you are reading. They aren't looking at screens. They are tucked into thick novels or folded newspapers like Pravda. The rustle of paper is the soundtrack of the morning commute. You watch the stations flash by, each one a different gallery of art and stone, until you reach your stop. The workday begins, but it doesn't feel hurried. There is a steady pace to things. You arrive at your desk or your station, and you exchange quiet greetings with your colleagues. There is a lot of talk about family, about what was on the television the night before, or about the difficulty of finding a good winter coat for a growing child. Life was built on these small, shared struggles and small, shared triumphs. Lunchtime comes, and you head to the Stalovaya, the workplace canteen. The air there is thick with the smell of broth and steamed grain. You take a plastic tray and slide it along the metal rails. You might get a bowl of borscht red beet soup with a dollop of sour cream swirling in the center like a white cloud. Perhaps some kasha, a warm buckwheat porridge that is earthy and filling. You eat with heavy stainless steel utensils, and you drink a glass of compote, a sweet, chilled fruit water made from boiled berries or dried apples. It tastes like summer, even when the ground outside is covered in snow. As the afternoon wears on, the light begins to fail. In the winter, the sun starts to dip early, turning the sky a pale, dusty purple. You finish your tasks, tidy your workspace, and begin the journey home. But first, you must stop at the shops. You take your avoska out of your pocket. You walk past the gastronome, the grocery store. You look through the large glass windows. Today, there is a line for milk. You join it. You stand in silence, or perhaps you strike up a quiet conversation with the person behind you. There is no rush. You wait. You watch the shopkeeper in her white apron use a large wooden abacus to calculate the price, the beads clacking back and forth with a satisfying, rhythmic sound. You buy your liter of milk in its glass bottle with the silver foil cap. You buy a loaf of heavy black bread, still warm and smelling of yeast and earth. You tuck them into your string bag and walk home. The city is glowing now. The street lamps cast long, yellow pools of light on the snowy sidewalks. You see the windows of the apartment blocks lighting up one by one thousands of little yellow squares, each one representing a family sitting down to tea, a child doing homework, an old man listening to the radio. Back in your apartment, the evening is long and slow. You take off your heavy boots and put on your slippers. The radiator is humming its familiar tune. You put the kettle on. The kitchen is the center of the world again. You sit with your family or your neighbors and you talk. You don't talk about the government or the great gears of history. You talk about the taste of the bread, or the way the snow is falling, or a funny thing you saw on the metro. There is a television in the corner, a bulky wooden box. You turn it on and wait for the tubes to warm up. The picture flickers to life, usually a news program, or perhaps a symphony, or a quiet film about life in the countryside. The voices are calm, the music is soft. There are no flashing lights, no loud advertisements. It is a steady, predictable background to your evening. Asterisk, the air out here is cool and smells faintly of damp concrete and the coming evening. As we step inside, the heavy metal door thuds shut behind us with a deep, muffled sound that echoes briefly in the stairwell. This is the beginning of our walk through the spaces where millions of people ended their days. Tucked away in the vertical neighborhoods of the Soviet Union, the stairwell is dim, lit by a single, bare bulb hanging from a high ceiling. The walls are painted a two-tone color, usually a deep sea bottle green or a dusty blue on the bottom half, with plain white plaster above. This was the standard, a familiar sight that never changed, no matter which city you were in. As we climb the concrete stairs, our footsteps make a soft, rhythmic sound. The edges of the stairs are slightly rounded from decades of boots and shoes passing over them. There is no rush. We move slowly, passing the heavy wooden doors of various apartments. Behind each one is a world of its own, yet each world follows the same quiet rules of the evening dot. In the older parts of the city, we find the communal apartments, These were grand, old, pre-revolutionary buildings that had been partitioned into many smaller living spaces. To enter one is to enter a long, narrow hallway that seems to stretch on forever. The floor is made of dark, polished wood that creaks under even the lightest weight. Along the walls of the hallway, you see rows of hooks. Each family has its own set of hooks for their heavy wool coats and fur hats. Above the hooks are shelves holding various items: a spare tire for a bicycle, a crate of potatoes, or a stack of old newspapers. The smell here is complex and layered. It is the scent of many lives overlapping. You can smell the sharp, clean aroma of laundry soap, the lingering warmth of fried onions and sunflower oil from the shared kitchen, and the faint, sweet scent of old paper and tobacco. It is a dense atmosphere, but not an unpleasant one. It feels lived in, solid, and certain. Because so many people live behind these doors, there is a profound, unspoken commitment to silence. As night falls, the hallway becomes a place of whispers and soft treading. Everyone knows that the walls are thin, and the respect for a neighbor's sleep is a vital, invisible thread that holds the community together. We move toward the kitchen, which is the heart of the communal apartment. It is a large room with several small tables, one for each family. In the center sit the stoves. Even late at night, a single pilot light might be burning, casting a tiny, flickering blue glow in the darkness. On the walls, there are rows of electricity meters, their little silver discs spinning at different speeds, measuring the modest energy of each room. A dripping faucet in the large porcelain sink provides a steady, hypnotic beat. Drip, drip, drip. It is the sound of time passing in a place where tomorrow will look very much like today. Now, imagine we leave the old communal building and travel to a newer district where the Krusiovkas stand. These are the 5-story buildings we saw from the outside. They don't have elevators, so the climb is part of the daily ritual. The air here is different. It feels a bit lighter, a bit more private. Each family here has their own front door, their own small sanctuary. We enter one of these apartments. The entryway is very small, barely enough room for 2 people to stand. You immediately take off your shoes and put on Topochka soft, felt slippers. Everyone wears them. They muffle your steps, ensuring that the neighbors below hear nothing but a soft sliding sound as you move about. The main room is a multi-purpose space. During the day, it is the living room. At night, it becomes the bedroom. The furniture is made of dark, polished wood veneer. There is a large cabinet called a strenka, or the wall, which stretches across one side of the room. It is filled with the family's most prized possessions, sets of fine crystal glasses that are only used on special occasions, rows of hardback books Tolstoy, Jack London, and perhaps a few porcelain figurines of dancing bears or graceful birds. The glass doors of the strinker catch the light from the street lamps outside, creating soft reflections on the ceiling. Against the other wall is the divan krovat, a sofa that unfolds into a bed. The process of unfolding it is a nightly ceremony. You move the small coffee table to the side, pull the heavy cushions away, and click the metal frame into place. The bedding is pulled from a storage chest crisp, white linen sheets that have been dried on a balcony in the cold air, giving them a sharp, fresh scent. There is a heavy wool rug hanging on the wall. This was a common sight in Soviet homes. It wasn't just for decoration. It acted as insulation, dampening the sounds from the neighbors next door and keeping the warmth of the room trapped inside. The patterns on the rug are intricate and repetitive deep reds, browns and creams, and if you stare at them long enough in the twilight, they seem to pulse gently with the rhythm of your own breathing. The walls are indeed thin. If you listen closely, you can hear the muffled murmur of a television through the plaster, or the distant, rhythmic thumping of a radiator. But these sounds aren't intrusive. They are comforting. They remind you that you are not alone in the world, that all around you, hundreds of other families are performing these same quiet movements. You hear a neighbor turn off a lamp, the distinct click of a plastic switch. You hear the soft groan of a bed frame as someone settles in. Then, the silence deepens. We walk toward the bathroom, which in these apartments is often split into two tiny rooms. The walls are covered in small, square tiles, usually a pale blue or a creamy yellow. The lighting is soft and a bit yellowed. The bathtub is deep and heavy, made of cast iron that holds the heat for a long time. There is a small, round water heater above the sink, and the pipes are painted the same color as the walls. Everything is functional, simple, and clean. You wash your face with cool water, the porcelain feeling smooth and cold under your hands. The towel is thick and slightly rough, smelling of the sun and the wind. Back in the main room, the window is slightly cracked open to let in the night air, even in the colder months. The Soviet heating systems were very powerful, often making the rooms quite toasted, so a sliver of cold air is a welcome guest. You look out at the courtyard. The shadows of the leafless trees stretch across the playground. A single cat scurries across the asphalt, disappearing under a parked car. The city feels like it is holding its breath. There are no sirens, no shouting, no loud music. The discipline of the day has transitioned into the discipline of the night. You sit on the edge of the bed for a moment. The room is dim, lit only by the glowing dial of a small bedside radio or the moon reflecting off the snow on the windowsill. The routine of the Datha bus, the shop, the tea, the shared kitchen is over. It is a life of small squares. The square of the apartment, the square of the window, the square of the television screen. But within those squares, there is a profound sense of order. You know that when you wake up, the milk bottle will be on the landing. The trolley bus will arrive at 7:10, and the world will continue in its steady, unhurried orbit. The furniture in the room seems to settle into the floor. The shadows grow longer and softer. You lie back, and the heavy quilt settles over you like a gentle weight. The texture of the duvet cover is a bit coarse against your skin, but the warmth underneath is immediate. You listen to the silence of the building. It is a dense, thick silence, woven together by the sleep of hundreds of people. The radiator gives one last, soft clink, a final greeting for the night. Your eyes trace the patterns on the wall rug one last time. The deep reds and ochres blur together as your vision softens. The world of the Soviet apartment, the shared hallways, the polished wood, the smell of rye bread and laundry is a quiet, safe cocoon. There is nothing left to do, nothing left to plan. The history of the day is written, and the history of tomorrow is yet to begin. You feel the slow, heavy pull of sleep, as steady and reliable as the concrete walls that surround you. The temperature in the room is perfect, a balance of the radiator's warmth and the cool breeze from the window. You take a deep breath, and as you exhale, you let go of the 20th century, the 11th time zone, and the long hallway of the communalka. Everything is still. Everything is at rest. The street outside the grocery store is wide, and the morning light is a pale, filtered silver, casting almost no shadows on the frosted pavement. We are standing here together, wrapped in the heavy stillness of a winter morning. You can feel the weight of your coat, a thick, dark wool that has been brushed many times, smelling faintly of the wooden wardrobe where it hangs every night. Around us, a small group of people has already gathered near the tall glass doors of the gastronome. No one is speaking loudly. There is a quiet, collective understanding that the day begins with waiting as we stand in the queue. The sound of the city is muffled by a thin layer of fresh snow. You hear the rhythmic, scraping sound of a wooden shovel somewhere down the block as a janitor clears a path. A steady shish-shish-shish that anchors the morning in a slow, predictable loop. Your breath rises in a soft, white plume, vanishing into the cold air. To stand in a line in this world is not an act of frustration. It is a ritual. It is a time for reflection, for observing the texture of the back of the coat in front of you, for noticing the way the ice has formed intricate, fern-like patterns on the corners of the shop windows. The queue moves with a glacial, patient pace. Every few minutes, there is a collective shuffle, forward a dozen pairs of heavy boots, stepping in unison. A soft crunch of salt and grit underfoot. This movement is a language of its own. It signals progress, however small. You look at the person ahead of you, an elderly woman in a patterned headscarf, a playtock tied firmly under her chin. She carries 2 large string bags, her avoski tucked under her arm like folded nets, waiting to be filled. Her hands, clad in thick, hand-knitted mittens, are clasped in front of her. She is a statue of patience, her eyes fixed on the door with a calm, neutral expression that has seen decades of mornings just like this one. When the doors finally open, there is no rush. The crowd filters in with a somber, orderly grace. Inside, the air is warmer, but it carries a distinct sharp chill from the large marble counters and the refrigerated glass cases. The floors are made of stone tiles, worn smooth in the center by millions of passing feet. The light comes from long, humming fluorescent tubes that cast a soft, flickering glow over the scene. The shelves are not crowded. They are spacious, holding rows of identical items with a clean, repetitive geometry. There might be 50 jars of pickled cucumbers, all with the same yellow label, standing in perfect alignment. There is a strange, quiet beauty in this lack of choice. It simplifies the mind. You do not have to decide between brands. You simply wait for what is available. We move toward the dairy section. The shop assistant wears a tall, starched white hat and a heavy apron over her sweater. She moves with deliberate, unhurried motions. She takes a glass bottle of milk, its foil cap a dull green, and places it on the counter. The sound of glass meeting marble is a sharp, clean clink that echoes in the high-ceilinged room. You reach into your pocket and pull out your ration cards or your small leather wallet. The exchange is quiet. Money is handled carefully, the soft rustle of paper notes, the heavy clinking of kopek. There is a sense of weight to every transaction, a feeling that each item brought home is a small victory of persistence. We continue our walk through the store, our footsteps echoing softly on the tiles. Near the back, the smell of the bread reaches us. It is a deep, sour, comforting aroma, the smell of fermented rye and hard crusts. The bread is kept on wooden racks, tilted so you can see the dark, heavy loaves. There is a long metal fork hanging by a string from the rack. You use it to poke the bread, checking for freshness. The crust resists the prongs, firm and sturdy. This bread is the foundation of every meal. It is heavy enough to feel like a stone in your hand, but when sliced, it reveals a soft, dense interior that tastes of the earth. You take a loaf, wrapping it in a piece of simple brown paper that crinkles loudly in the quiet shop. The process of shopping is divided into stages. First, you choose your items and receive a small slip of paper. Then, you walk to the casa, the heavy wooden booth where the cashier sits. Behind her is the abacus, its wooden beads worn dark by use. She slides the beads across the wires with a rapid-fire clack-clack-clack, a percussive music that defines the Soviet economy. You pay, she stamps your slip with a heavy purple ink, and you return to the counter to collect your goods. This back movement creates a slow, weaving dance among the shoppers. No one complains about the extra steps. The repetition is soothing. It is a world where time is measured not by seconds, but by the completion of these small, necessary tasks. As we leave the gastronom, the weight of the string bag in your hand is satisfying. The handles of the Avaska dig slightly into your palm, a reminder of the bounty you are carrying home. We walk past a small kiosk selling kavos from a large yellow tank on wheels. Even in the cold, a few people stand there, drinking the dark fermented bread drink from heavy glass mugs. They stand in silence, staring at the grey sky, savoring the bittersweet liquid. Before moving on to their next destination, the rhythm of the day is a series of these quiet pauses. You might stop at a specialized store for meat, only to find the shutters closed and a small handwritten sign pinned to the wood. Inventory. You do not feel anger. You simply turn away, your boots making a soft, solitary sound on the pavement. You will come back tomorrow or the day after. There is a timelessness to this cycle. The seasons change, the snow turns to slush, the slush turns to dust, the dust turns to the green leaves of Mabe. The act of waiting remains the same. It is the constant thread of life. Now, imagine we are back in the apartment, preparing a simple evening meal. The kitchen is small and warm, the windows clouded with steam. The meal is not complex. You boil a pot of potatoes, their skins cracking to reveal the white, starchy flesh. You slice the black bread into thick, uneven pieces. Perhaps there is a tin of sardines in oil, or a small piece of salted pork fat, sallow, which you slice thinly until it is translucent. You sit at the table, the same table where you sat this morning. The light from the single overhead bulb is yellow and soft. You eat slowly. Every bite is appreciated because you remember the cold air of the queue, the sound of the abacus, and the weight of the walk home. There is a profound sense of gratitude in this simplicity. The meal is enough. The warmth of the room is enough. The silence between you and your family members is not an empty silence. It is a full, contented one. Outside, the street lamps flicker on. The world grows dark, and the lines at the stores have long since dispersed. The shop assistants have gone home, the wooden abacuses are still, and the bread racks are empty, waiting for the early morning delivery. You wash your plate in the sink, the water running in a thin, steady stream. The routine is nearly complete. You find yourself yawning, the slow pace of the day finally catching up with you. The Soviet Union was a place of many things, but at its heart, for the person living within it, it was a place of profound patience. It was a life lived in the waiting spaces, and in those spaces, there was a kind of peace removal of the frantic, the unnecessary, and the loud. As you move toward your bed, you feel that peace settling over you, like the snow settling on the quiet streets outside. The world is predictable. The world is still. You pull the heavy curtains closed, shutting out the blue light of the evening. The room is a safe, dark box. You climb into bed, feeling the coolness of the sheets against your skin. Your mind drifts back to the queue, back to the rhythmic sound of the janitor's shovel and the steady, swaying motion of the trolley bus. These sounds become a lullaby, a repetitive, boring, and beautiful song of a time that moved at the speed of a human heart. The darkness is absolute, save for the tiny red glow of the radiator valve. You breathe in the scent of the room, the faint smell of rye, the clean smell of cold air, the lingering warmth of the tea. You are tired in a way that feels right, a physical tiredness born of a day well spent in the simple pursuit of living. The history of the great nations, the maps, the borders, the speeches, all of that is far away. Here, in this room, there is only the slow rise and fall of your chest. Sleep is coming now, as inevitable as the morning dew. It is a long, deep sleep, unburdened by the need for more than what you have. You are part of the quiet history of the everyday. You are home. We are looking at the way stories and news reached people in the Soviet Union, not with a flash or a roar, but with a slow, steady hum. In this world, information was not something that chased you down. It was something that arrived at a specific hour, in a specific way, as predictable as the setting of the sun. There was a great deal of waiting involved in being entertained. And in that waiting, there was a peculiar kind of peace. Imagine it is a Tuesday evening. The day's work is done, and you have returned from the long walk and the quiet queues. You are sitting in your favorite armchair, sturdy piece of furniture, with wooden armrests and a heavy woven fabric. The room is dim, lit only by a single floor lamp with a pleated silk shade that casts a warm amber glow over the corner of the room. This is the hour of the evening when the world outside feels very far away. There are no notifications, no pings, no scrolling. There is only the physical presence of the objects around you in the center of the room, or perhaps perched on a shelf alongside your collection of books sits the radio. In the Soviet Union, the radio was often the first voice of the morning and the last voice of the night. It was a solid object, often housed in a polished wooden cabinet with a glowing amber dial and cream-colored plastic buttons that clicked with a heavy mechanical finality. When you turn the knob, you don't hear a sudden burst of sound. You hear the tubes warming up a low, static-filled breathing that gradually clears into a human voice. The voice on the radio is always calm. It is deep, measured, and formal. There is no frantic excitement in the delivery. Whether the announcer is discussing the harvest in the southern republics or the progress of a hydroelectric dam, the tone remains steady and reassuring. It is a voice designed for a quiet room. You sit back and listen, letting the words wash over you. You don't need to react. You don't need to share. You simply receive. The radio is like a guest in your home who speaks politely and never interrupts your thoughts. Sometimes it plays classical music, a Tchaikovsky symphony or a Rachmaninoff concerto. The notes float through the small apartment, mingling with the scent of the tea and the soft sound of the wind. Against the glass, on the small table beside you, lies the morning's edition of Pravda or is. The paper is thin and slightly rough to the touch, and the ink has a faint, sharp smell that stays on your fingertips. You fold it slowly. There are no colorful advertisements or sensational headlines. The layout is orderly, a series of long, dense columns of text and black and white photographs of tractors, smiling workers, and diplomats in heavy overcoats. Reading the newspaper is a slow process. You start at the top left and work your way down, your eyes moving across the lines with the same steady pace as the trolleybus. Moving through the city, there is a comfort in the repetition of the language. You see the same phrases, the same descriptions of progress and unity. It is a predictable landscape of words. You aren't looking for surprises. You are looking for the familiar. If there is a story about a new park being built in a city thousands of miles away, you read it with a quiet interest, imagining the trees and the benches in that distant place. The newspaper is a bridge to a vast, sprawling country that you may never see in its entirety. Yet it feels connected to you through these thin, ink-stained pages as the evening deepens. Your attention might turn to the television. In many homes, The TV was a relatively new arrival, a bulky box made of dark wood and glass. Turning it on is another ritual. You press the button and wait. For a few moments, the screen is dark, save for a tiny green or red light. Then, a small white dot appears in the center of the glass, expanding slowly until it fills the screen with a grainy, flickering image. The quality is not perfect. There are sometimes horizontal lines that crawl upward, or a light snow of static that makes the image look as though it is being viewed through a misty window. There are only a few channels, perhaps 2 or 3. There is no need for a remote control. If you want to change the channel, you must stand up, walk across the room, and turn a heavy plastic dial that makes a loud, satisfying clack. But most of the time, you stay on the channel that is already there. You watch whatever is being broadcast. It might be a program about the wildlife of the Siberian tiger, slow shots of reindeer moving through the snow, or the sun setting over a frozen river. There is no narrator shouting for your attention. There is only the sound of the wind and the soft, descriptive voice of a scientist. You find yourself mesmerized by the slow movement of the animals, their breath visible in the cold air. Much like your own breath in the morning queue. Later, in the evening, there might be a broadcast of a theater production or a ballet from the Bolshoi. The camera stays still for long periods, allowing you to see the entire stage. You watch the dancers move with a graceful, silent precision. The music of the orchestra is muffled slightly by the television speakers, giving it a soft, nostalgic quality, as if it is coming to you from a great distance. You aren't just watching a performance. You are participating in a cultural moment, shared by millions of others in identical apartments across the Union. Everyone is seeing the same dance, hearing the same notes, and feeling the same quietude, because there is so little to choose from. You value what you have more deeply. You don't flip through channels in search of something better. You settle into what is provided. If it is a film about a quiet village, you watch the entire film, following the slow arc of the story without impatience. The pace of the media matches the pace of your life. It is unhurried. It respects the fact that you have worked all day and that now, in the evening, you deserve a space that is free from agitation. Sometimes, the television isn't used at all. Instead, you might spend the evening with a book. The Soviet Union was a nation of readers. Books were precious, often hard to find, and passed from friend to friend like treasures. You might be reading a thick, hardback volume of poetry by Pushkin, or a translated novel by Victor Hugo. The pages are yellowed at the edges, and the spine is cracked from many readings. You turn the pages slowly, the sound of the paper a soft shee in the silent room. The act of reading is a deep immersion. Without the distractions of the modern world, the characters in the book become as real to you as your neighbors in the communal kitchen. You spend an hour on a single chapter, pausing to look out the window at the dark courtyard, reflecting on a particular sentence. Time seems to stretch. An hour feels like an evening. An evening feels like a season. The world within the book and the world within your apartment bleed into one another. Both are quiet. Both are stable, and both are governed by a sense of enduring history. If you have children, the evening routine includes Spokojnej noci, good night, little ones. This was a nightly program with puppets, a piglet named Krusha and a dog named Steposhka. For 10 minutes, they would have a gentle conversation about being kind or helping their parents. Then, a short cartoon would play, perhaps a hand-drawn story about a hedgehog in the fog or a lonely crocodile. The animation was soft, the colors muted and artistic. When the show ended with a lullaby, the children knew it was time for bed. There was no arguing, no, just one more. The television had spoken, and the routine was absolute. As we sit here in this imagined room, the air is still. The radiator continues its rhythmic tink-tink, a metallic heartbeat that anchors the silence. You look at the objects on your shelf, the small porcelain clock, the glass vase with a single dried flower, the stack of records. These are the things that fill your world. They don't change. They don't demand anything from you. They simply exist alongside you in the amber light. You think about the news you read today. It feels distant, like a story from a book. The grand events of the world are far away from this armchair, this cup of tea, and this flickering television. In the Soviet Union, the domestic space was a fortress of the familiar. No matter what was happening in the halls of power, the evening routine remained the same. You would wind the clock, turn off the radio, and watch the white dot on the television screen shrink into nothingness. The silence that follows the turning off of the media is profound. It is a thick, velvet silence that settles over the apartment blocks. You hear the distant sound of a train whistle, long, lonely wail that carries across the frozen suburbs. It is a reminder of the vastness of the land, of the thousands of miles of tracks connecting one quiet town to another. Everyone is under the same dark sky, and everyone is drifting toward sleep in the same unhurried way. You stand up from your chair, your joints feeling a little stiff, but relaxed. You walk to the window and draw the heavy curtains. The fabric is thick and velvet, blocking out the world completely. You are now in your own private sphere, a world of soft linen and heavy quilts. The information of the day has been processed, stored away in the back of your mind. There is nothing more to know. There is nothing more to see. You climb into bed, and the mattress supports you with a familiar firmness. The room is dark now, save for the faint sliver of light under the door from the hallway lamp. You close your eyes, and the images from the dapper, grainy television, the black and white photos in the newspaper, the glowing amber dial of the radio begin to blur into the soft, grey landscape of dreams. This was a world defined by the collective pulse of millions. A life where every morning began with the same sounds, the same sights, and the same quiet sense of duty. We begin our journey in the early morning, just as the first light of a winter sun begins to touch the frost on the windows. The air in the bedroom is cool, but the heavy wool blankets keep you warm and grounded. You hear the distant metallic clang of a tram as it rounds a corner several blocks away, a sound that is as regular as a heartbeat. There is no urgency in this morning. The workday doesn't start with a frantic rush, but with a series of slow, practiced movements that have been performed thousands of times before. You dress in your work clothes. They are sturdy, practical, and made to endure. Perhaps it is a dark blue cotton jacket if you work at the plant, or a simple, well-pressed grey suit if you work in an administrative office. The fabric is thick and heavy, designed for longevity rather than flair. As you pull on your boots, you feel the solidity of the floorboards beneath you. You step out of your apartment, closing the heavy wooden door with a muffled thud that echoes softly in the stairwell. The walk to the factory or the office is a time of quiet transition. The streets are filled with a sea of dark coats and fur hats, everyone moving in the same direction, a slow tide of humanity. There is a specific scent to the morning air, mixture of cold ozone, the faint smell of coal smoke from a distant heating plant, and the metallic temps of the damp pavement. You find yourself walking in step with the stranger beside you, your footsteps creating a rhythmic counterpoint on the sidewalk. Crunch, 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 dot. At the entrance to the workplace, there is the procodnia, the gatehouse. You show your pass to the guard, a quiet man who has sat in the same wooden booth for 20 years. He nods, a minimal movement that signals the start of the day. You pass through the turnstile, the heavy metal clicking with a solid, mechanical sound that marks your transition from the private world into the world of the collective. If you work in a factory, the scale of the building is immense, yet it feels strangely intimate. The ceiling is high, crisscrossed with steel girders and thick pipes painted in shades of grey and silver. The light filters down through large, industrial windows, catching the dust motes that dance in the air. The machines are already humming a low, vibrating bass note that you feel in your chest more than you hear with your ears. This is the song of the industry, a steady, unvarying drone that never changes. Your task for the day is simple and repetitive. Perhaps you are at a lathe, or perhaps you are monitoring a series of dials on a large control panel. Your hands move with a grace born of deep familiarity. You don't have to think about what you are doing. Your body knows the rhythm. You pull a lever, you check a gauge, you record a number in a thick, cloth-bound ledger. The paper of the ledger is slightly yellowed and smells of glue and old dust. The scratch of your fountain pen on the page is a tiny, delicate sound hidden beneath the roar of the machines. There is a meditative quality to this kind of work. The mind is free to wander while the hands remain busy. You think about the tea you will have later, or the way the light is hitting the brick wall of the building across the courtyard. There is no pressure to innovate, no demand for disruption. Success is measured by the steady completion of the quota target that is known, predictable, and shared by everyone in your unit. You are a single gear in a vast, magnificent clock, and there is a profound sense of security in knowing exactly where you fit in the office buildings. The atmosphere is different, but equally rhythmic. The rooms are long and filled with rows of heavy wooden desks. The air smells of ink, old paper, and the faint, sweet scent of the tea that is always brewing in a corner. The soundscape here is composed of the rhythmic clack-clack-clack of typewriters and the occasional, muffled ring of a heavy black telephone. When the phone rings, it isn't a sharp, digital chirp, but a mechanical bell that vibrates through the desk. You spend your hours moving papers from one tray to another, applying stamps with a heavy wooden handle. The sound of the stamper dull, rhythmic thump is the heartbeat of the bureaucracy. Each stamp is a mark of completion, a small gesture of order in a complex world. The walls of the office are decorated with posters that show the progress of the 5-year plan graphs, with lines that always move upward in a steady, confident climb. You look at these graphs and feel a sense of quiet participation in something much larger than yourself. Midday is marked by the lunch whistle, a long, low mechanical wail that signals a collective pause. You walk to the canteen, your boots echoing on the concrete floors. The canteen is a vast room with long tables covered in white oilcloth. You take your place in the line, the steam from the large soup kettles rising to the ceiling. You receive a bowl of cabbage soup and a thick slice of black bread. The clatter of spoons against ceramic bowls is the only sound, a gentle, domestic noise in the heart of the industrial giant. You eat slowly, savoring the warmth of the broth. After lunch, there is a brief period of rest. You might sit on a bench outside, watching the trucks move slowly through the factory yard. Or you might read a few pages of a book. The world feels still, as if the entire country has taken a deep, synchronized breath. The afternoon passes in much the same way as the morning, The shadows in the factory grow longer, stretching across the floorboards. The hum of the machines seems to grow softer as you become more attuned to it. You find yourself counting the hours, not with a sense of impatience, but with a quiet satisfaction. Each hour is a task completed, a part of the whole. There is no competition here, no race to the top. You are surrounded by colleagues who have been with you for years. You know the names of their children. You know which of them likes their tea strong and who prefers it with a spoonful of jam. This social fabric is the true safety net of your life. As the workday nears its end, there is a gradual winding down. You clean your tools, wiping them with an oily rag until they shine with a dull, dark luster. You close your ledger and place it in the drawer of your desk. The machines are turned off one by one, the low hum fading into a heavy, expectant silence. You change out of your work clothes and back into your heavy wool coat. The exit through the gatehouse is the mirror image of the morning. You nod to the guard, the turnstile clicks, and you are back on the street. The sun has set, and the city is bathed in the soft, orange glow of the street lamps. The commute home is a time of decompression. You stand on the bus or the tram, swaying gently with the movement of the vehicle. The windows are steamed up from the breath of the passengers, creating a private, blurred world inside. You look at the silhouettes of the apartment blocks passing by, each window a glowing yellow square of light. Returning home, you feel a deep, physical sense of completion. The work was not a burden, it was an anchor. It gave the day a structure, a purpose, and a place. You take off your boots and put on your slippers, the softness of the felt a reward for the day's labor. The apartment is warm, the radiator humming its familiar metallic tune. You sit in your armchair, the events of the day fading into a hazy memory of grey metal, blue jackets, and the smell of ink. The history of work in this time was not a story of individual glory, but a story of the steady, quiet movement of the whole. It was the sound of millions of pens scratching, millions of hammers striking, and millions of footsteps walking in unison toward a shared evening. As you close your eyes, you can still feel the faint vibration of the city, the lingering pulse of the machines that have now fallen silent for the night. The world of the office and the factory is at rest. The ledgers are closed, the tools are stowed, and the gates are locked. There is nothing left to do but drift into the deep, dark sea of sleep, knowing that tomorrow the rhythm will begin again, exactly as it was today. The continuity is your comfort. The routine is your peace. Take a very slow, deep breath. Feel the air move in and out, steady and rhythmic, as the world around you begins to soften and fade. We are going to travel back tonight to a place of perfect order, place of tall windows, polished wooden desks, and the faint, dusty scent of chalk. We are drifting back to the world of a Soviet childhood, a time when the path forward was clearly marked, and the days were measured by the soft ringing of a school bell and the scratch of a fountain pen on thick, creamy paper. Imagine it is a crisp September morning. The sky is a pale, translucent blue, and there is a hint of wood smoke in the air. You are a child again, and you are standing in front of the mirror, adjusting your school uniform. It is a ritual performed by millions of children across the vast expanse of the country, all at the same hour. If you are a boy, you wear a sturdy suit of dark blue wool, the fabric thick and a bit stiff, with silver buttons that catch the morning light. If you are a girl, you wear a deep brown dress with a high collar, covered by a black silk apron for everyday wear. or a crisp, white lace apron for special occasions. You feel the weight of the fabric against your skin. It is a weight that feels like belonging. Around your neck, you tie a silk scarf of a bright, vibrant red. This is the mark of the young pioneers. You smooth the fabric with your palms, ensuring the knot is perfectly centered. This red scarf is more than just a piece of clothing. It is a symbol that you are part of a great, unfolding story. As you step out of your apartment, your satchel, heavy leather bag with metal clasp stumps rhythmically against your hip. The streets are filled with other children, all dressed exactly like you, moving like a slow, quiet river toward the neighborhood school. The school building is a grand stone structure with wide staircases and heavy wooden doors. As you enter, the air changes. It is cooler here, smelling of floor wax, old books, and the faint, sweet aroma of the milk being prepared in the cafeteria. The hallways are long and echoing, but today they are hushed. There is a sense of profound discipline that isn't forced, but simply understood. You walk to your classroom, your shoes making a soft tap, tap, tap on the linoleum dot inside the classroom. The desks are arranged in perfect, straight rows. These are not modern desks. They are heavy, wooden pieces of furniture where the seat and the table are joined together. The top of the desk is slanted, and at the very top there is a small, circular indentation for an inkwell and a long, thin groove for your pens and pencils. You sit down, and the wood feels cool and solid beneath you. You run your finger over the surface, feeling the faint nicks and scratches left by the children who sat here 10, 20, or 30 years before you. You are part of a long, unbroken chain of learning. The teacher enters the room. She is a woman of quiet dignity, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing a simple grey suit. As one, the entire class stands up. There is no command given. It is a collective gesture of respect. The sound of 30 chairs scraping back at once is a deep, harmonious chord. You stand straight, your hands at your sides, until she nods and tells you to be seated. The lesson begins. The subject is calligraphy. In this world, how you write is as important as what you write. You open your Propecia exercise book. The pages are gridded with pale blue lines, designed to guide the slant and height of every letter. You take your fountain pen, dip it carefully into the ink, and begin to trace the Cyrillic alphabet, A, B, V. The nib of the pen makes a tiny, rhythmic scratching sound on the paper. You move slowly, focusing on the pressure of your hand, the way the ink flows onto the page, and the steady beat of your own heart. There is a meditative quality to this repetition. The world shrinks down to the tip of your pen and the blue line on the paper. The textbooks are small and thick, with cloth-bound covers in muted colors, faded greens, deep reds, and earthy browns. When you open them, the paper is heavy and has a specific, comforting smell of glue and history. The illustrations are not flashy. They are realistic, hand-drawn images of wheat fields, orbiting satellites, and heroic figures from the past. You read the stories of explorers and scientists, and their lives feel like a steady, guiding light. The information is presented clearly, with a sense of certainty. You don't have to wonder if what you are learning is true. It is the shared knowledge of the entire nation. During the break, you go to the cafeteria. The light streams in through tall, arched windows, illuminating the steam rising from large aluminum pots. You receive a glass of hot tea, very sweet and very dark, and a piece of bread with a thin layer of butter. You sit with your friends at long wooden tables. The conversation is quiet to talk about the upcoming football match or a book you are reading. There is a sense of safety in this shared environment. The school is a fortress of the familiar, a place where the rules are clear and the expectations are the same for everyone. After classes, you might stay for a club, a krujak. Perhaps it is the model airplane club, where the room smells of balsa wood and glue, or the chess club, where the only sound is the rhythmic clack of wooden pieces on a board. You spend an hour in deep concentration, your hands working slowly and methodically. There is no rush to finish. The joy is in the process, in the slow accumulation of skill, as the afternoon sun begins to dip lower in the sky, casting long golden shadows across the schoolyard. You begin your walk home. The air is cooler now, and the street lamps are starting to flicker to life. You pass the local park, where the statues of famous writers stand like silent guardians among the thinning trees. You feel a sense of quiet accomplishment. The day has been orderly. The tasks have been completed. The knowledge has been gathered. Back in your apartment, you sit at the small table in the corner of the room to do your homework. The radio is playing softly in the background a program of folk music or a reading of a classic play. You open your satchel and take out your books. The lamp on your desk has a green glass shade that casts a soft, focused light over your work. You rewrite your lessons, your pen moving with the same steady rhythm you practiced this morning. Outside the window, the city is settling into its evening pulse. You hear the distant hum of the trolley bus and the soft murmur of neighbors in the hallway. There is a profound sense of continuity in this childhood. You know that tomorrow will be very much like today. You will wear the same uniform, sit at the same desk, and hear the same bells. This predictability is not boring. It is a warm, protective blanket. It allows you to grow slowly, like a tree in a sheltered forest. As the evening draws to a close, you put away your books and prepare for bed. You hang your uniform carefully on a wooden hanger, smoothing out the wrinkles. You untie your red scarf and fold it neatly, placing it on the chair beside your bed. The sheets are cool and smell of the wind. You climb into bed, feeling the weight of the day lift from your shoulders. Your mind drifts back to the classroom, to the smell of the chalk and the sound of the teacher's calm, steady voice. You see the rows of desks, the slanted sunlight, and the blue lines in your exercise book. These images become a soft, repetitive loop, a lullaby of order and peace. The world is vast, but your place in it is small, secure, and known. The history of this childhood is a history of quiet moments. It is the scratch of a pen, the taste of sweet tea, and the sight of a red scarf glowing in the morning light. It is a world that moved slowly, giving you time to breathe, to learn, and to dream. The city is quiet now. The school is dark, its long hallways silent and empty, waiting for the return of the children in the morning. You close your eyes, and the last thing you see is the soft, green light of your desk lamp fading into the velvet blackness of sleep. We are entering the world of the Soviet weekend, a time that was not about excitement or stimulation, but about the profound, restorative power of stillness. In this world, leisure was not something you chased. It was something you settled into, like a comfortable old coat. There were no flashing screens or noisy advertisements competing for your attention. Instead, there was the park, the book, the chessboard, and the long, wandering walk. Time, on a Saturday or Sunday, seemed to stretch out like the long shadows on the grass, moving so slowly that you could almost hear the clouds drifting overhead. Imagine it is a Saturday afternoon in mid-October. The air is crisp and carries the scent of fallen maple leaves and damp earth. You are walking toward the Park of Culture and Rest. The entrance is marked by a grand, white archway, its pillars tall and silent. As you pass through, the sound of the city traffic, the occasional car and the humming trolleybus begins to fade, replaced by the soft, rhythmic crunch of gravel under your boots. The park is vast, designed with wide, sweeping boulevards that invite a slow, meditative pace. You are not here to run or to rush. You are here to practice the art of the pragulka, the aimless, thoughtful stroll. You see families walking together, 3 generations side by side. The grandfathers wear heavy wool caps and dark coats, their hands clasped behind their backs as they walk with a steady, measured gait. There is no hurry. If they see a friend, they stop and talk for a long time. Their voices low and calm, discussing the weather or the quality of the autumn harvest. Along the edges of the path, there are wooden benches painted a deep forest green. Many of them are occupied. You see a woman sitting alone, her lap covered by a thick blanket, deeply immersed in a book. In the Soviet Union, reading was the most popular form of travel. Through the pages of a thick, cloth-bound novel, people traveled to the mountains of the Caucasus, the steppes of Central Asia, or the salons of 19th century Paris. You watch the slow, rhythmic turning of the pages she, a sound that blends perfectly with the rustle of the wind in the trees. Further into the park, we come to a place of deep, concentrated silence, the chess pavilion. This is a simple wooden structure with a roof, but no walls, filled with rows of small tables. Even in the cool autumn air, the tables are full. Men sit across from one another, their chins resting on their hands, eyes fixed on the checkered boards. The only sound here is the occasional, solid clack of a wooden piece being moved, followed by the soft sigh of a spectator. Chess was the national heartbeat. It was a game of patience, of thinking 3, 4, 5 steps ahead, a perfect reflection of a life where one learned to wait and to observe. You stand for a moment, watching a game. The players don't speak. They exist in a shared world of geometry and logic. The wooden knights and bishops catch the pale sunlight, casting tiny shadows across the squares. There is a profound sense of peace in this mental labor. It is a quiet, disciplined form of rest. As we continue our walk, we pass a small pond. The water is dark and still, reflecting the grey-blue of the sky and the golden skeletons of the birch trees. A few people are standing by the edge, tossing small crumbs of black bread to the ducks. The ripples spread out in perfect, slow circles, moving toward the shore and disappearing. You find yourself standing there too, mesmerized by the repetition of the water's movement. In this world, entertainment was found in the simplest of things, the way a leaf floats on the water, the way the light changes as the sun dips behind a building now. Imagine we leave the park and walk back toward the residential district. On the weekends, the courtyards of the apartment blocks become communal living rooms. In the center of the courtyard, there is usually a large wooden table with benches. This is where the neighbors gather. You might see a group of men playing dominoes, the heavy tiles hitting the wood with a sharp, rhythmic snap-clack. It is a percussive music that defines the Saturday afternoon nearby. Laundry is hanging on long lines stretched between the trees. The white sheets and pillowcases flap gently in the breeze, sounding like the distant sails of a ship. The smell of clean linen dried in the cold air, mixes with the scent of wood smoke from a nearby chimney. It is a domestic, comforting atmosphere. You see a woman leaning out of a third-story window, resting her elbows on a small cushion, simply watching the courtyard. This was a common sight, the window watchers who observed the flow of life with a quiet, neutral interest. As the sun begins to set, the leisure time moves indoors. The evening is dedicated to the Zastolonot, a wild party, but a long, slow gathering around a table. Imagine being invited into a neighbor's home. The apartment is small, but the table is the center of the universe. It is covered with a white lace cloth. There are plates of sliced sausage, pickled mushrooms, and hard-boiled eggs. The focus of the evening is conversation and tea. The samovar or the kettle is always boiling. You sit for hours, the steam from your glass rising in thin, twisting ribbons. You talk about books, you recount stories from your childhood, or you simply sit in a comfortable silence. There is no pressure to be entertained. The company of others is enough. Someone might bring out a guitar and play a few chords, low melancholic songs about the woods or the sea. The music is soft, meant for a small room, not a concert hall in the winter. Leisure time became even more focused on the interior world. You might spend a Sunday afternoon at the public library, a grand, hushed palace of knowledge. The floors are covered in thick red carpets that swallow the sound of your footsteps. You sit at a long table under a green-shaded lamp, the light creating a private pool of warmth on your desk. You look at old maps or read journals about science and nature. The library is a sanctuary of quietude, a place where the collective wisdom of the world is held in a gentle, frozen embrace. Or perhaps you go to the museum. The Soviet Union had museums for everything: history, art, geology, even the history of the postal service. These museums were often quiet, sparsely visited places. You walk through long galleries of oil paintings or glass cases filled with minerals. The air is cool and still. You move from one exhibit to another with a slow, wandering curiosity. There are no interactive screens, no loud audio guides. You are left alone with the objects, allowed to form your own quiet relationship with the past. As the weekend draws to a close on Sunday evening, there is a specific feeling in the air, a sense of quiet preparation. You tidy your apartment, you iron your clothes for Monday, and you pack your bag. But you do it without the Sunday scaries or the anxiety of the modern world. The transition from rest to work is as natural and inevitable as the transition from day to night. You look out the window one last time before bed. The park is now a dark, silent expanse of trees. The chessboard pavilion is empty, the wooden pieces tucked away in their boxes. The courtyard is still, the laundry taken down from the lines. The city is preparing for sleep. The history of leisure in this time was a history of simplicity. It was a recognition that the human spirit needs space, not space filled with noise, but space filled with thought, nature, and the presence of others. It was a world where a walk in the park was enough to sustain you for the week ahead. You climb into your bed, the heavy quilt settling over you. Your mind is full of the images of the day, the golden leaves, the rhythmic click of the dominoes, the steam from the tea, and the quiet rows of books in the library. These images are like anchors, holding you steady in the stream of time. You feel a sense of profound weightlessness. There is nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do. The weekend has done its work. It has slowed your heart, quieted your mind, and prepared you for the deep, dark rest of the night. The Soviet Union, with its vast parks and its silent chess players, fades into the background of your consciousness. You are drifting now, moving toward a sleep that is as deep and as peaceful as a forest in winter. In the Soviet Union, time did not feel like a rushing river or a series of frantic, ticking seconds. Instead, time felt like a vast, calm ocean. It was a world of profound predictability, a life built upon the solid, unmoving foundations of routine. Every hour had its place, every day had its shape, and every year followed a cycle so reliable that it felt as if the future was already a well-known friend. Let your mind rest on the image of a clock on the wall of a quiet hallway. It is a large, round clock with a simple black frame and a white face. The second hand moves with a deliberate, mechanical thud, not a sharp tick, but a soft, heavy movement that seems to vibrate through the wood of the building. This is the heartbeat of a world where everyone, from the Baltic to the Pacific, is living through the same hour in the same way. There is a deep, meditative comfort in this sameness. You do not have to wonder what tomorrow will bring, because tomorrow has already been written into the schedule of the years. Imagine waking up at exactly 6 a.m. You do not need an alarm to tell you it is time, because the radio on the wall, the Tochko, begins its morning broadcast with the majestic, slow chords of the national anthem. It is a sound that fills every apartment block simultaneously. In every kitchen, the blue flame of the gas stove is being lit. In every bathroom, the water is being turned on. There is a grand, invisible synchronization to this moment. Millions of people are reaching for their tea at the same time. Millions of people are lacing their boots at the same time. This is the rhythm of the collective, a steady, unhurried march into a day that looks exactly like the one before it. As you step out into the morning, you notice the regularity of the street. The trolleybus arrives at the stop at exactly 7:12 a.m. It has arrived at 7:12 a.m. for the last 10 years, and it will arrive at 7:12 a.m. for the next 10. The driver is the same, the passengers are the same, and the route is the same. You take your seat and lean your head against the cool glass of the window. The city passes by like a film you have seen many times. The same bakery, the same park, the same statue of a worker holding a hammer. This repetition is not a burden. It is a form of peace. It removes the need for choice, the need for anxiety, and the need for constant adjustment. You can simply be. The workday is governed by the whistle. It is a low, mournful sound that carries across the rooftops, signaling the start of a shift, the start of a break, and the end of the day. Time is not measured by individual achievement, but by the steady movement of the shift. You find yourself falling into a trance-like state as you perform your tasks. The repetition of the movements, the turning of a screw, the stamping of a paper, the filing of a folder becomes a form of meditation. Your hands know what to do so well that your mind is free to drift into the quiet, grey spaces of thought. You are not racing against a clock. You are dwelling within it. Consider the concept of the plan. In the Soviet Union, time was organized into 5-year blocks. This meant that the horizon of the future was always visible. You knew what the country would be building in 3 years. You knew what the goals would be in 4. This grand scale of time made the individual days feel smaller and more manageable. If a goal was not met today, there was always tomorrow, and the day after that, and the year after that. There was a profound patience in this system. It was a world that understood that anything of value takes time to build, and that the steadiest progress is the one that never changes its pace. In the afternoon, you visit the same shop you have visited every day for a decade. The shopkeeper knows your face, though you may never have spoken more than a few words. You wait in the same line, leaning against the same tiled wall. The waiting is a part of the time. It is a pause in the day, a moment to stand still and simply exist in the present. You watch the dust motes dancing in the light of the window. You listen to the rhythmic clack-clack of the abacus. You feel the cool air of the shop on your skin. Time expands in these moments of waiting, becoming thick and slow, like honey dripping from a spoon. When the workday ends, the transition to the evening is slow and deliberate. You return to your apartment, and the routine of the evening begins. The tea, the news, the quiet conversation. The television program starts at 9 p.m., and the news anchor speaks in a voice that has not changed its tone or its tempo in 20 years. The words are familiar, the themes are constant, and the world feels stable. You sit in your armchair and let the familiarity of the evening wrap around you like a warm, heavy blanket. The walls of your home are thick, and the sounds of the neighbors are distant and rhythmic, the muffled sound of a radio, the soft footsteps in the hallway, the humming of the pipes. The seasons in the Soviet Union were the only thing that truly changed the pace of time, but even they were predictable. The arrival of the first snow was a ceremony of silence. One morning, you would wake up to find the world muffled and white. The routine would adjust slightly. The heavy coats would come out. The boots would be polished with wax, and the tea would be brewed a little stronger. But the core of the life remained the same. The winter was a time for even deeper stillness, a time for long evenings under the lamp and the slow, rhythmic reading of thick books. The years passed like the turning of a great wooden wheel. Each year brought the same holidays, the red banners of May Day, the solemn parades of November. You knew exactly where you would be on these days, who you would be with, and what you would eat. This sameness created a sense of immortality. If everything is always the same, then nothing is ever truly lost. The past and the present and the future all blend into one long, continuous moment. Think about the objects in your home. The furniture, the clock, the radio, they are built to last for generations. They do not go out of style. They do not break down. They are the silent witnesses to the passage of time. You look at the grain of the wood on your table and realize it has been there since you were a child, and it will be there when you are old. This permanence of objects reinforces the permanence of time. You are living in a world that is built to endure, a world that values the steady and the solid over the fast and the new. As we sit here in the quiet of this imagined history, let the weight of this predictability settle over you. Feel the tension leaving your muscles as you realize there is nothing to anticipate, nothing to fear, and nothing to change. The rhythm of the Soviet day is a lullaby. It is the sound of a million clocks ticking in unison. It is the sound of a million doors closing at the same hour. It is the sound of a vast nation breathing in and breathing out, slow and steady, day after day, year after year. Your mind begins to drift now, caught in the slow, hypnotic loop of the routine. You see the morning tram, the factory gate, the glass of tea, the evening lamp. You see the snow falling on the statue in the park. You see the 5-year plan stretching out toward the horizon like a long, straight road. Each image is a soft, grey pearl on a string of time that has no beginning and no end. You are part of the line, part of the rhythm, part of the silence. The radiator in your room gives a final, gentle clink. The light from the street lamp outside casts a soft, unmoving shadow on the wall. The world is in its place. The schedule has been followed. The day has been completed. You can let go of the hours now. You can let go of the minutes. You can let yourself sink into the timeless space between one day and the next. In this world of sameness, sleep is the most natural transition of all. It is the ultimate routine, the final predictable act of the day. You close your eyes and feel the darkness as a familiar friend. There is no rush to wake up, for the morning will be exactly as it should be. The radio will play, the tram will arrive, and the cycle will begin again. As steady and as certain as the turning of the earth. Everything is regular. Everything is rhythmic. Everything is still. Sleep now, within the calm, vast ocean of time. The clock on the wall continues its slow, heavy thud, marking a world at peace with its own repetition. You are safe in the sameness. You are home in the routine. Feel the weight of your blankets settling over you, much like the evening shadows used to settle over the wide, quiet avenues of a city in the Soviet Union. As we drift into the final hours of the day, the world becomes a place of soft edges, muted tones, and a silence so deep it feels like a physical presence. Tonight, we are not looking at the maps or the monuments. We are simply existing in the quiet, blue-grey hours of a Soviet nighter. Time when the immense energy of the nation finally exhaled and turned toward the stillness of rest. Imagine you are standing on a balcony, on the fourth floor of a brick apartment building. The air is cool and smells of wood smoke, damp stone, and the faint, clean scent of the coming frost. Below you, the street is nearly empty. In this world, the night does not belong to the neon flash or the frantic bustle of commerce. There are no glowing billboards, no digital screens flickering in the windows, no sirens cutting through the dark. There is only the steady, amber glow of the spaced far apart, casting long, overlapping pools of light onto the pavement. The light is soft and warm, making the grey concrete look like velvet. Listen to the sounds of the night. They are few and far between, which makes each one feel significant and rhythmic. You hear the distant, hollow clang of a tram as it heads toward the depot for the final time. It is a lonely, melodic sound that carries through the still air for miles. Then there is the soft, rhythmic swish-wish of a street sweeper's broom made of birch twigs. A sound that has remained unchanged for a century. Beyond that, there is only the wind whispering between the 5-story blocks and the faint, metallic hum of the city's heart, the distant pulse of the power stations and the heating plants that keep the millions of radiators singing their quiet. Clinking songs dot in the courtyards between the buildings. The darkness is even deeper. The tall poplars and birch trees stand like silent sentinels, their leaves occasionally rustling with a sound like falling water. You see a few windows still lit tiny, golden squares against the dark mass of the building. Behind those windows, life is slowing to a crawl. Someone is folding a newspaper. Someone is turning the page of a book. Someone is pouring the last glass of tea from a heavy porcelain pot. These actions are performed slowly, with the quiet dignity of a person who knows the day is done and there is nothing left to hurry for. We move back inside the apartment, where the silence is thick and comforting. The light in the hallway is dim, a single low wattage bulb that casts long, soft shadows against the floral wallpaper. You walk across the room in your felt slippers, the sound of your footsteps a mere ghost of a noise on the polished floorboards. Every object in the room feels solid and permanent in the twilight, the heavy oak wardrobe, the glass-fronted cabinet filled with crystal, the small radio with its glowing green tuning eye. These things do not change. They have been here for years, and they will be here tomorrow. This permanence is a lullaby in itself. You sit by the window for a moment, looking out at the skyline. The city does not disappear at night. It merely softens. The outlines of the factories and the grand government buildings are visible as dark silhouettes against a deep indigo sky. There is a sense of immense scale, but it is not a threatening scale. It is the scale of a vast, sleeping giant. You feel small, but you also feel safe, held within the predictable, rhythmic machinery of a world that values order and rest. The night is a collective experience. Across 11 time zones, millions of people are experiencing this same transition into the dark. Their routines synchronized by the same clocks and the same radio broadcasts. The temperature in the room is perfectly constant. The radiator beneath the window is warm to the touch, its surface painted a smooth, creamy white. It emits a faint, metallic scent, the smell of warmth itself. You watch the frost begin to bloom in the corners of the window pane. Intricate white feathers of ice that grow so slowly you cannot see them move. The world outside is freezing, but inside you are enveloped in a cocoon of steady, reliable heat. This contrast to cold, vast exterior and the warm, quiet interior creates a feeling of profound security. The evening tea has been finished. The glass podstacanic sits on the table, a few stray tea leaves at the bottom of the glass. The kettle on the stove has long since stopped its whistling. The kitchen, which was the center of conversation and activity just an hour ago, is now a place of shadows. The wooden table is clear, the chairs are tucked in, and the checkered curtains are drawn. Everything has been put in its place. The order of the home reflects the order of the night. You prepare for bed with slow, deliberate movements. There is no blue light to strain your eyes, no urgent messages to answer. Your mind is as quiet as the street outside. You turn off the final lamp, and the room is plunged into a soft, natural darkness, broken only by the sliver of amber light from the street lamp filtering through the curtains. Your eyes adjust, and the familiar shapes of the room emerge: the curve of the armchair, the rectangular frame of a family photograph, the dark spine of a book on the nightstand. As you climb into bed, the sheets are cool and crisp. You pull the heavy, quilted duvet up to your chin, feeling its comforting weight. It is a weight that grounds you, pinning you gently to the mattress. You close your eyes, and the world of the Soviet Union becomes a world of pure sound and sensation. You hear the rhythmic tink-tink of the radiator pipes. You hear the distant, muffled groan of the building settling into the earth. You hear your own slow, steady breathing, matching the pulse of the quiet city. The history of the night in this place was a history of withdrawal. It was the time when the collective became a collection of individuals, each tucked away in their own small, warm square of the great concrete hive. There was a sense of equality in the night. Everyone, from the factory worker to the scientist, was lying under the same dark sky, waiting for the same dawn, protected by the same silence. The night was a pause in the struggle, a truce with time, a period of absolute neutrality. Your thoughts begin to drift, becoming fragmented and soft. You think of the long, straight railways stretching across the taiga, where trains are moving slowly through the dark, their rhythm a constant dodum, dodum, dodum. You think of the quiet villages where the snow is piled high against the wooden fences. You think of the lighthouses on the frozen Baltic coast, their beams sweeping slowly across the dark water. All of these places are connected by the same stillness. the same vast Soviet night. The darkness is not empty. It is full of the peace of a day well lived, and the certainty of a tomorrow that will be much like today. There is nothing to fear in this dark. It is a blanket. It is a sanctuary. The heavy gears of the world have stopped turning, and the silence is absolute. The only thing that remains is the slow, rhythmic passage of time, moving toward a morning that is still many hours away. You are sinking now, deeper into the warmth of the bed. The images of the day, the grey streets, the red scarves, the steam of the tea, the clack of the abacus are all fading into a soft, grey mist. The history of the nation is falling asleep. The statues are asleep. The parks are asleep. The factories are asleep. And you, too, are part of this great, quiet rest. The radiator gives one final, soft clink. The wind outside dies down to a whisper. The world is perfectly still. Everything is in its place. Everything is as it should be. We have traveled through many rooms, many streets, and many seasons together. Now, as the hour grows very late, and the light in your own room has surely dimmed to a soft, barely visible glow, we find ourselves standing back at a distance, looking at the whole of this vanished world. It is not a view of maps or grand monuments, but a view made of a million small, flickering lights, the windows of the apartment blocks, the embers in a village stove, the glowing dials of 1,000 radios. This was a world built on the idea of the permanent and the predictable. It was a life where the rhythm was slow, the colors were muted, and the silence was a shared language. Imagine we are sitting on a bench in a quiet courtyard, one of those courtyards that sat at the center of a block of crucial. The sun is beginning to set on the entire area, casting long golden-grey shadows across the asphalt. There is a sense of great weight in the air, the weight of decades of routine, of millions of journeys to work, of endless cups of tea, and of the steady and hurried growth of children who wore the same red scarves and studied the same textbooks. It was a life of profound sameness, yet within that sameness there was a deep, quiet pulse of humanity. Think of the textures we have encountered, the roughness of the black rye bread, the cool, smooth marble of the metro stations, the scratchy warmth of a wool coat, the thin, ink-smelling paper of the morning news. These were the tactile boundaries of a Soviet life. They didn't change. A person could grow from a child to an adult and find that the smell of the bread and the sound of the trolleybus remained exactly as they had always been. There is a specific kind of rest that comes from such stability. It is the rest of knowing that the ground beneath your feet is solid, and that the rules of the day are written in stone. As the evening air cools, you can hear the sounds of the building behind you settling. It is a symphony of small, domestic noises. A window being latched, the muffled sound of a chair being pulled out from a kitchen table, the distant, rhythmic thumping of a radiator. These sounds were the soundtrack to a life lived in common. No one was truly alone in this world. You were always part of the collective breath of the building, the street, and the city. Your neighbors were the constant witnesses to your life, their voices a familiar murmur through the thin walls, a reminder that the human story is a shared one. The Soviet Union was a place where time seemed to move at the speed of a pedestrian. There was no rush to innovate, no frantic race to keep up with a changing world. Things lasted. A refrigerator, a radio, a pair of sturdy boots, they were companions for a lifetime. You looked at the objects in your home not as things to be replaced, but as parts of your own history. You knew the exact sound the latch on your cupboard made. You knew the specific way the light hit the rug on your wall at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You lived deeply within the space you were given, finding beauty in the repetition and the familiar dot in the parks. The chess players still sit, their minds moving through the same ancient patterns. The board is a world of logic and patience, where a single move can take 20 minutes of contemplation. This was the tempo of the culture, slow, deliberate, and thoughtful. There was time to think, time to walk, and time to wait. Waiting was perhaps the most characteristic act of the Soviet citizen. Waiting for the bus, waiting in the queue for milk, waiting for the spring to thaw the rivers. In that waiting, there was a peculiar form of meditation. It was a time when the mind could wander, when you could observe the frost on a window or the way a stranger's coat was mended. It was a life of forced patience that eventually became a natural state of being. Now, imagine the snow beginning to fall, the slow, heavy flakes of a Russian winter. They fall on the statues of the poets, on the tracks of the trams, and on the quiet, empty playgrounds. The snow muffles everything, turning the world into a landscape of white and grey. It is the ultimate silence. Under this blanket of snow, the country feels as though it is dreaming. The factories are still humming, the trains are still moving across the vast steppes, but the sound is swallowed by the winter. You are inside, looking out through the double-paned glass, the warmth of the room pressing against the cold of the night. The history we have walked through is not a history of winners or losers, but a history of the ordinary. It is the history of the woman in the white apron at the gastronome. It is the history of the boy practicing his letters in a quiet classroom. It is the history of the old man listening to the symphony on a wooden radio. Their lives were not defined by the grand speeches of the leaders, but by the quality of the tea, the warmth of the radiator, and the reliability of the morning commute. It was a life of small, steady comforts in a world of immense, slow-moving power. As you drift closer to sleep, the images of this world begin to blur and merge. The red of the scarves blends into the red of the sunset. The grey of the concrete blends into the grey of the winter sky. The rhythmic clack-clack of the abacus becomes the rhythmic dodum of a train on the tracks. You are no longer observing a history. You are part of the quiet, turning wheel of time. You feel the immense distance of the Siberian forests, the salty air of the Black Sea, and the ancient stone of the Kremlin walls, all existing at once in a state of profound rest. The Soviet Union, in this memory, is a place of perpetual twilight. It is always the hour when the lamps are being lit and the tea is being poured. It is always the moment before the news begins. It is a world suspended in a state of calm expectation. There is a sense that everything has already happened, and therefore there is nothing left to worry about. The struggles of the day are over, and the struggles of tomorrow are not yet born. There is only the present moment, which is as still and as deep as a frozen lake. You hear the radiator in your room give a long, slow hiss, the sound of steam traveling through the pipes, bringing warmth to every corner of the house. It is the same sound that millions of people heard every night for 70 years. It is a sound of continuity. It tells you that you are safe, that the world is being looked after, and that you may now let go of the day. Your breathing slows, matching the rhythm of the distant, muffled city. You are sinking into the heavy, quilted darkness, where the boundaries between the past and the present disappear. Think of the long hallways of the communal apartments, the light from the street lamps catching the polished wood of the floors. The hallways are empty now. The coats are hanging on their hooks. The boots are lined up by the doors. The kitchens are dark, save for the tiny blue flame of a pilot light. The entire building is breathing in unison, slow, deep, collective breath. This is the peace of the hive, the comfort of knowing that everyone around you is also seeking the same rest, the same warmth, the same quiet. The city outside is now entirely still. The last tram has reached the depot. The street sweepers have finished their work. The statues in the squares are covered in a thin veil of frost, looking like ghosts of a time that refuses to be forgotten. But the time is not a burden. It is a soft, heavy blanket. The history is not a series of dates, but a series of sensations. The smell of rye, the sound of a radio, the feel of a wool blanket. These sensations are the true legacy of the life we have explored. They are the things that remain when the names and the borders have faded away. Your mind is now a quiet room, lit only by a single, dying ember. The stories we have told are like shadows on the wall, soft, flickering, and gentle. You see the face of the shopkeeper, the hand of the teacher, the silhouette of the chess player. They are all nodding, all settling into their own rest. The world of the Soviet Union is closing its eyes. The 11 time zones are falling into darkness, one by one, from the Pacific to the Baltic. The great grey nation is asleep. The silence is absolute now. It is a thick, velvety silence that wraps around your thoughts and pulls them down into the deep, dark water of sleep. There is no more to say. There is no more to remember. The history has become a dream. The routine has become a lullaby. You are drifting on the slow, steady current of a time that no longer exists, but which still holds you in its patient embrace. The weight of the quilt is all you feel. The warmth of the room is all you know. The rhythm of your heart is the only clock that remains. You are moving into the space where there are no words, only the soft, grey light of a winter morning that is still far, far away. The night is vast. The rest is deep. The silence is perfect. Everything is still. Everything is settled. The story is fading. The image is blurring. The world is at rest. Gently, slowly, the darkness takes hold. The past is quiet. The present is quiet. You are asleep.